Green Living at Home is brought to you by Nedbank. Make things happen.
Last week we looked at how the orientation of a house can reduce its carbon footprint by lowering energy use. Today we take a look at some of the other passive design strategies that help lessen a house's environmental impact. The areas that can have the greatest effect on how green your new home is are insulation, ventilation, and the building materials used in construction and where they came from. Insulation is incredibly important to a home's overall energy efficiency. If your house is losing heat, then you're going to have to generate more to keep the temperature stable. There are three main areas of a home that need to be insulated during construction.
On a new build, insulation, I think, is critical, and it's pretty straightforward. It's not a big deal. It's a little bit more costly, but that's not an issue. So insulating the floor so that heat doesn't escape during the winter, through the walls and through the roof. So that's a fairly straightforward exercise that we can embark upon.
An uninsulated house can lose up to 30% of its heat through the walls, as much as 35% through the roof, and around 10% through the floor. The reason the floors and walls must be insulated during construction is that it's very hard to insulate those areas at a later date, while it's quite easy to add extra insulation to the roof once the house is finished. However, it is possible to go too far.
The Germans are renowned for being absolutely unbelievably rigorous in their application of materials. To the extent that, from my travels in Europe, they've become so good at insulating their buildings that there is absolutely no leakage. And there's a problem with fresh air. So now they have to start bringing in a system that allows you to be able to open a window in such a way that air can leak in just to replace, because otherwise air becomes stale. So no sooner have you sorted something else that you've got another problem. You know, that's kind of the way it goes. Yeah.
Speaking of air quality, in the summer months, ventilation becomes as important as insulation. If your home is well ventilated, you won't have to use energy to keep it cool. The simplest way to cool a home naturally is by cross ventilation. If you put a window that can be opened or closed on either end of a room, air will flow naturally through the space, cooling as it goes and eliminating the need for fans or air conditioners.
Cross ventilation is critical, and it's amazing to us how many times architects leave it out of a building design. You know, if you're on a warm summer's night and you're sleeping in a room and you have one window open, it's fair. If you have a window at the back of the room open and some form of cross ventilation, it's a very much more pleasant experience.
Often people just put doors in instead of allowing for the doors to have opening sections. So let's say in a bedroom, for example, it's not as important in a living space, because when you're in the living space, the doors are normally open or not. But it's in a bedroom, obviously at night, when you need to close the doors for security reasons, you don't often have any available opening section, which is essential. So we don't like air conditioning. We don't believe in it. I don't think it's necessary. I really don't.
To keep a home's carbon footprint as small as possible, always consider the building materials used in construction and where they come from. Materials sourced within 400 kilometers of the build site are preferable, as they don't have to be transported great distances, with all the carbon usage that implies. What's best is if the material is sourced on the site itself, as is the case with rammed earth walls. This is the process of taking soil from the building site, mixing it with cement and building it up in layers to form a wall, as Anna Bailey did with one of her recent projects.
The key feature of the house is the rammed earth wall, which is the spine of the building. The entire house hinges off the rammed earth wall, so it had to be extremely solid. The nicest thing about the rammed earth wall is the fact that it uses soil from the site. So every aspect of the original soil is inherent in the wall. It's natural, it's as it came out the ground. It's exactly as it was put on the earth. Each layer is about 100 millimeters thick. We decided not to add any oxides, which a lot of people do, which gives the wall a kind of quite decorative, almost sort of Zebrano effect, which I decided I didn't really particularly want for this house.
For the interior finishes, you can also use repurposed wood from sustainable planted forests, or wood from alien eradication programs.
One of the things I like to use is FSC accredited timber, which we've got here for all the decking and all the timber on the property. We've used alien eradication poplar, which comes from the area. It's locally sourced. We've used bamboo, which has a very quick lifespan. The growth of bamboo is very fast, so the footprint of bamboo is not as big as other materials. So it's a fairly green material. We've also used recycled pine from old broken down furniture in some of the cupboard doors. Even in terms of the cement, I think the more local the production of the cement, even if we're using cement bricks or if we're using cement in the build, there are fairly local sources for those products. So the more local you get, the less the carbon footprint, the transport costs, etc.
While there is a cost premium to doing everything green during construction, those costs are soon recovered through the energy-saving properties of the home.
I think there probably is slightly more expensive to build the way we do. There are certain taxes that we insist on. For example, somebody who is wanting to get a minimum square metre cost to their dwelling is going to frown upon the idea of collecting 50,000 litres of water off their roof, because it's something they don't quite understand, and it's thrown on at the end of the build, and it seems that there's a possible place they can save money. But honestly, the costs of that will come back to them incredibly quickly. If they want to water that little bit of their lawn or the courtyarded area that requires water, they have it, and it's free and it's accessible. They can use it within their grey water systems as well. So there is a slight education and maybe a slight premium on the original build cost that one very, very swiftly makes up.
A fully green, environmentally friendly, energy-efficient home also has a greater resale value than a home that wasn't built using these principles.
Without a doubt, houses built in this way will have a higher resale value. I mean, not only because of the aesthetic, which I think is going to be refreshing, and I mean, I think of the 50 or so houses that have been completed here on Monaghan Farm, we probably 80% of them have been shown in a magazine just because they do excite some kind of comment. So I think from that point of view, there'll be a premium on these houses. And in terms of materials, if you're looking at two houses, you can demonstrate that one of them has a 50% lower electricity and water bill than the one next door to it. I think that certainly that would have an influence on your decision to buy.
The great thing about building a home with modern green design standards and materials is that you don't have to sacrifice the aesthetics of the house. In fact, modern green homes are often better looking than their cookie-cutter estate counterparts.
One raises a good point. The impact that it has on the design is quite profound. What is very, very interesting, though, is that houses and buildings generally are stopping looking like a picture of a building, and they're looking much more like they need to work. So the idea of a Georgian building, center door, 2 windows, ABC rhythm, ABC, ABC, whatever, that's out of the window. Now buildings look like they need to look. I've got to have a pitched roof, I've got to have a sun gatherer here, they have to put water there.
I don't think the aesthetics are an issue at all. I think if anything, it improves the aesthetics of a design, of a submission. Verandas are beautiful, overhangs are beautiful, creating shadow is beautiful.
Next week, we'll take a look at what the state of solar power is in South Africa and what solar options are available.
Green Living at Home was brought to you by Nedbank. Make things happen.